You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. In New Jersey, a jury has declared a mistrial in the hate crimes trial of a former New Jersey police chief, Frank Nucera, who was accused of assaulting a handcuffed black teen because of intense racial animus. That jury deadlocked on federal hate crime assault and civil rights deprivation charges. Now, the same jury convicted him of lying to the FBI about the case, but declared the mistrial on the most serious charges. Federal prosecutors said Nucera was motivated by racial hatred when he slammed the teen's head into a door jamb during a 2016 arrest at a Bordentown hotel. He pleaded not guilty and retired in 2017 during the FBI investigation. The jury, which has 9 white people and 3 African Americans, deliberated more than 45 hours over the course of 8 days. Let's discuss this with our panel. Dr. Nyambe Carter, Department of Political Science, Howard University. Dr. Cleo Monago, political analyst, and also Kelly Bethea, communications strategist. All right, folks, first and foremost, Cleo, I want to go to you. It's very interesting. The jury convicts him, on lying to the FBI, but how do you not convict him again on the federal hate crime charges when this guy made a comment that Trump is the last resort to save white people? He has racial animus against African Americans, and it was abundantly clear how this guy was recorded by his own officers.
Well, all I can do is use conjecture. I imagine that the white people who are on the jury are apprehensive to give this guy a charge that has race relation to it because they want to act like that's not an issue in this country. I think you know about the denial issue we have in this country regarding the problem of white supremacy. But the other charge that he did get away with doesn't have a racial context, so I think they preferred to give him something so they wouldn't look particularly bad. So they allowed him to get that, but didn't give him the issue that was the worst thing, because that might disturb a precedent of people getting away with racist behavior while in a uniform. So that's my analysis of that situation.
Dr. Carter, bottom line here is you have a former law enforcement official who clearly lied to the FBI, racial animus, how he mistreated this black teen. And again, it's one of those cases where 9 white folks on the jury, 3 African Americans, well, these juries are just unwilling to call out these officers. I reminded the case in Connecticut where a black man was kneeling, going down, or to kneel, was going down to the ground, had his hands up, and the guy kicks him in the head, knocks him unconscious, and the jury found that cop, and it was on video, the jury found that cop to be not guilty.
Well, I think this is a pattern of behavior, and I agree with Cleo to the extent that this jury thought that he did something wrong. They didn't want to actually find him guilty of the worst part of this, which is doing this because the alleged perpetrator was a black teen. I think this pattern of sort of papering over what police officers do in the line of duty is a difficult one, but it's one that juries seem unwilling to disrupt. This pattern of going after the most vulnerable, the weakest, and those who are most easily singled out, I think is something we've seen, whether it was Connecticut or New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania. We see this as a nationwide epidemic, and I think until cops and others like them start to face real consequences, this kind of stuff will continue, in part because there's nothing that is really going to change this behavior unless there are real penalties. This guy got a chance to retire, and I'm assuming he's retired with full benefits, so that means his pension is untouched, all the sort of benefits that come from him being a police officer that gave him the cover to abuse his power, to harm the public and harm this young man in particular. And we don't know how many other people are out here who have faced this officer at some point in their career or in their lives who've been similarly mishandled. I think until we start sending a real message that this is going to have a real consequence, we'll continue to see this. And I think the hate crimes enhancement is oftentimes one of those things left on the table because jurors are just reluctant to believe that somebody with racist intent is working on a police force and using that to drive their decisions about law enforcement. But the data would suggest that it's probably more common than we appreciate.
I don't think jurors care about how common it is or is not. They do want to find a white officer for hurting somebody black.
Well, I think the the idea of, and I think it's part of the language we use. We always say these cops are a bad apple. They're not usual, they're unusual. And I think even in this cop's case, they would say, well, he was just this one guy. This is not about sort of the crime or what the alleged crime was or what the initial or precipitating incident was. This thing happened, police officers were called, and this guy may have been overzealous, but it's not a part of a larger behavior. So I would disagree that jurors don't care. I just don't think that for many white jurors, and we don't know what the black jurors in this case said. I mean, we saw what they did at Amber Geiger's case, so it's no claim, we can't claim that just because there were black jurors there, they felt differently. But we can say that I think people have a denial, and I think using this language of a bad apple or this was a bad misstep, it leads us to make these false assumptions that this stuff is not more usual than we all know it is.
Before I go to Kelly, I want to pull up the video of Frank Nucera's attorney. Here's what he had to say.
We were hoping for a not guilty verdict on those. I still believe that that would have been the correct verdict, but obviously this jury worked very hard over 8 days deliberating. Certainly, I think even in and of itself, if you can talk about something for 8 days, that's inherently indicative of reasonable doubt. But I respect their process, and I know they worked hard. So we're glad that we got a mistrial on those two most serious counts. As to the conviction on the least serious of the 3 counts, I still have a difficult time reconciling that with the disposition of the other 2 counts. But again, I have to respect the jury's verdict at this point. We'll assess our options going forward on that. But I'm very glad today that at least for now, this weight has been lifted from Frank Nucera's shoulders. He's held his head high throughout this process. He's handled it with grace and dignity, and I'm glad the jury, at least some of the people on the jury, certainly saw it our way, and I think it was a good number of people.
Kelly, your thoughts?
His note about the 45 hours of deliberation equating to reasonable doubt to me is troubling because I don't think that's the case at all. If anything, I think it was the jury's possibly having a reckoning within themselves as to what the contents of this case entailed. You have to really face yourself in situations like this as a juror and kind of sort of put yourself in that police officer's shoes. Like, what would you do? What would you have done? What would a reasonable person have done in this situation? And I think the reason why it was a hung jury is because a lot of those jurors who, did not find him, liable for this, they probably thought that they would have done the same thing. And that's what scares people, is not the fact that they think that they're bad apples or anything. They think that they are the bad apple and they don't want to punish somebody for something that they would have done themselves. And once people have that moment within themselves, then we can have a larger discussion as to what to do. But like my colleagues were saying, it's not a bad apple situation. It's not a predicament where there's a lone wolf. I know that narrative is thrown out there a lot. No, this is an inherently American problem, and we had Americans on that jury, and as Americans, they probably were like, I would have done the same thing, but I know he was wrong. I don't know what to do here. They probably felt that conflict within themselves.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, that's my frat brother, Gerald Albright, on the saxophone there. He is going to be one of the many folks at the 2nd annual Luxe Jazz Experience taking place in Cabo, November 7th through the 11th. I'll be broadcasting Roland Unfiltered that Thursday and Friday, the 7th and the 8th there. But it's unbelievable. 3 days of crazy concerts, folks. You have the opportunity, if you can't go, first of all, if you want to go, you can get a package. Go to lifeluxejazz.com, LIFELUXEJAZZ.com. But if you can't go, you can still be there by virtue of the live stream. That's right. Get a live streaming pass for $10.99. You get to stream all 3 days of concerts from these amazing artists. As I said, Gerald Albright also will be there. Alex Bougnong, Raul Madan, Incognito, Pieces of a Dream, Kirk Whalum, Average White Band, Donnie McClurkin, Shalea, Roy Ayers, Tom Brown, Ronnie Laws, and Ernest Quarles. All you got to do is go to GFNTV.com. That's GFNTV.com to get your live streaming pass. We want you to do that, folks. It is going to be fantastic. It's going to be a great 3 days. And so I'm certainly looking forward to it. And I want you to be there either in person or via the live stream on GFNTV.com. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.